Welcome to Mr Chino Talks, the show where we explore expanding consciousness one story at a time. My name is Albert Janegaling, aka Mr. Chino. Whether you're seeking practical tools for healing or a deeper spiritual meaning, our mission is to help you see new perspectives to transform your life. And that brings us perfectly to today's essential topic, the fear of being seen, right? So many of us feel it, right? That urge to shrink, to stay quiet, to avoid the spotlight, even when we know it's holding us back from our dreams. But today, my guest today is an expert guide on this very journey that we're gonna explore. So please welcome Nia. We have here Nia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So Nia's a mentor in somatic healing and manifestation. So what I love about Nia's work, which she shares with her followers on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll share those handles, is how masterfully she makes the journey from fear to freedom feel both practical and profound. She bridges the gap between the spiritual and the scientific, helping people release the trauma stored in their bodies so they can step into a life of magnetic confidence and authentic purpose. So Nia, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Please. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. How are you doing?
Great. You know, it's nice to hear yourself, somebody talk about yourself, because it kind of enforces that identity. And I think that that's something that's going to be key in what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm nervous and excited.
I know.
Because this is a topic that I personally I've struggled a lot, especially as a kid. You know, I was really tried to not be seen. I didn't know what that meant. I just felt that I should not be out there. I should not say anything without approval. I should minimize myself. I should basically torture myself, you know, and miss a lot of opportunities with that, right? I mean, I see it as part of my journey too, but I also met a lot of people through that. So I'm excited to explore this topic with you. You know?
I am too, and I think you started it off with a really beautiful illustration of your childhood and what communication and visibility meant to you. So I think we'll definitely touch on those topics, because I think that that's a very important component of it.
Yeah. But thank you. So let's get started. So we're gonna start drilling Nia with questions.
I'm ready for you.
So let's identify the problem first, right? So like in your work, why the fear of being seen is such a universal and fundamental block to creating a better life, you know, whether someone is spiritual or not. You know,
I think visibility, you have to show up for everything, whether it's going on a date, you know, meeting somebody for, the purpose of finding love, or whether it's in your career, whether it's just showing up with your friends and family. You have to show yourself, and you're putting yourself out there. And I think that when you're doing that, it touches upon the primal fears of, am I worthy? Am I lovable? Do I belong? And also just being accepted, you know? So I think that a lot of people have a lot of fears connected to not only stories, but maybe fears of judgment. And that's what creates the blocks that don't really get them to go forward and manifesting and creating the life that they want, because you have to show up in every area of your life in order to create the life that you want.
You know, and that's interesting. It's almost overwhelming, right? When you first start to understand that topic, like every aspect of your life, and someone like what are some of the places where have you seen that people struggle the most? I mean, all of it is, not being seen, but where they're like, definitely I'm not stepping into this.
It's worthiness.
It's worthiness.
Worthiness.
Yeah.
And I think that whether you're on social media or not, let's say that you go for a job interview. It's, am I qualified? Am I worthy of this position? Whether you go on a date, am I lovable? And I think all of it is tied to, it's not just self-esteem, it's not just confidence, it's deeper, it's where's my value, what am I worth, and am I worthy of being seen? Like you touched upon it with your childhood, where, and this is so often, I know not just for Hispanics, but a lot of children, where it's, children should be, what is it, seen and not heard, or, don't speak unless spoken to. You know, a lot of children I know that in our generations have learned that. We're taught, you know, you don't speak until somebody addresses you, or, you know, you stay quiet, and that's what's valued as a child. But as you grow older, you have to find your voice and be able to speak and show up.
Yeah, and there's always these memes or whatever on Instagram where they show the different generations and how they, I guess, they were more policed or self-policed as well too. Was like the older, the Gen X, the millennials. Millennials, I'm part of the millennial, so it's almost like that we got the point where we had values that we were told what to do and what not to do, but also we had a little bit of that freedom to be a bit more open, right? What can you tell me about what have you seen with the different generations?
I like to believe, and at least it's been my observation, that as the generations progress, we are getting more in touch with our emotions. We are becoming more free to express. We're becoming more free to be authentic. And that's actually something that the younger generations value a lot, is authenticity. So, you know, when I was little, it was fix your face. You know, now you see the younger ones, they walk around with whatever face they want to put on. It's not, I always have to look like a cute little doll that's so amused by everything. It's, they wait and then they respond, and they don't feel the need to act according to what other people would find more palatable. And so I for me, it's been my observation that the younger generations are becoming a little bit more integrated with themselves and their own authenticity.
That's true. And you know, to some point, I guess we tend to, I would criticize, but then I would step back and I'm like, wait, hold on, they're being true to themselves, right? And that's very powerful, you know? So that is amazing.
The older generations have a tendency to criticize the younger ones for being so sensitive. And I understand why they think that, because to them, there was a value placed on them where being tough, having thick skin, and just pushing through life and being able to take the abuse and being able to function with it, they wear that as like a badge of honor. But what I can appreciate about the younger generations is that they understand that it's okay to feel, and that it's okay for them to say, I'm not okay with being mistreated, and I'm not okay with not being allowed to speak my truth.
Yeah, that's powerful. You made me think about, you know, the badge of honor. Like practically, that's where I'm like, okay, I identify, where you would dismiss your feelings, how you feel, what you thought about yourself, the concept about yourself. Put it aside and adopt another one for me to be okay, to be accepted.
To be accepted, because that's what maybe somewhere along the lines you learned, that's what you're supposed to do in order for me to appreciate you, for me to love you, for me to think of you in a high esteem.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I know we talked a little bit about, so from an everyday person, so where does this come from? You know, is this often linked to a core belief formed in childhood, which you mentioned, but would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, it all starts with a story. There's a story we're constantly believing about ourselves when it comes to visibility and who we are, really. Our identity is established in a story. And that story begins with our childhood. You know, oftentimes you'll have the oldest one, oh, she's so responsible, or the middle one, oh, he's such a rebel, or the youngest one, oh, that's the favorite child, you know. Everybody attaches labels to themselves based on their perception of what their experience of their childhood growing up was. And not only that, but other people, the way other people perceived you, you create a narrative in your mind. And, you know, we don't develop our prefrontal cortex until we're about the age of 25. So imagine our judgment of ourselves. Sometimes we pick up erroneously the ideas of what we perceive is what people are thinking about us. So, for example, for me, when I was a child, I perceived that I wasn't interesting enough or smart enough or had value enough for my father. So I always had to perform. I always had to say something very intelligent. And over the course of me growing up, I had to work on my vocabulary, my intelligence, making sure I was always well studied, so that when I did speak, I wanted to be able to sound not just intelligible, but I wanted to sound articulate and eloquent. And so that's something that you learn as a child. But then there's also not just the father figure or the mother figure. There's the siblings that also come into play too, because it's like, oh, Nia's always the, she's the oldest, so she wants to be the center of attention,
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you have it from all angles that are coming to you. So now imagine how many different labels you're internalizing, because it's really what one person thinks about you and what another person thinks about you, but it doesn't really have to become who you are. And yet we do internalize it, and we do wear it as our true identity, which it's not.
Yeah, it's interesting to realize how powerful the psyche is. It's like a program. When I used to hear like, oh, the programming, the matrix work, and I see it now as actually true. Like, you are programmed, or we in collaboration, like with everybody, right? Obviously, your family, your friends, and your siblings, like you mentioned, programmed to become whatever, and then we just go about in life with that programming, with that software, right?
Yeah.
But so that's
exactly, it's your operating system, and the way our mind works, we're basically running on loops. We're constantly on autopilot. So whatever is set as your baseline subconsciously, you're constantly going to be showing up through that programming.
Yeah, that's so interesting to step back and look at like eagle view, so you can analyze. Okay, what am I doing, right? That's also a skill. So eventually we'll talk about that too. So so now in your observations, how does that like psychological fear literally show up in the body, right? Can you explain the nervous system or?
Yeah, you have the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And when it comes to visibility, that shows up in so many different ways. Like, I've learned that for me, it's flight, and flight shows up in overworking or getting myself busy. So like when I'm scared to show up, I'll be like, oh, well, I need to edit, or oh, well, I need to make sure I've got the aesthetics just right, or you kind of make yourself busy with doing so many things to where you're almost like, well, I couldn't do it because I'm doing so much. So it's like you're flying, you're avoiding. Then there's the fight, and that can show up with people being defensive, like, well, I'm just gonna throw this video out into the ether and see what happens. And if they don't like it, well, that's too bad. You have this like defensive way of showing up. Again, it could be in dating, it could be whatever. But then you also have fawn, which a lot of people don't, because obviously the freeze we know about, it's, you have analysis paralysis, or you just don't show up, or you procrastinate and you just put it off. But the fawn, a lot of times people don't think about fawning as, a defense mechanism where if you're in relationships, you're constantly trying to be really nice. You're like a people pleaser because you're like, please don't hurt me type of vibration. So then what happens in visibility with the fawn coping mechanism is you want to appeal to everybody. You want everybody to like you. So you change yourself, you adapt yourself to make yourself the flavor that everybody wants. And so the way that it shows up in the body sometimes is in these fight or flight responses. But then on a somatic level, I've actually had somebody that, I asked her, where do you feel it? And she was telling me, I feel it in my chest. And then I said, what do you think that feeling in your chest is? And she wasn't sure. So I had her ask herself, like I said, imagine yourself as a little child and go picture yourself and tell me what it is that you're feeling as a child. And she said, I feel all this fear. And so that was the question I asked her first, and then she told me that it was that she felt it in her chest. The fear was in her chest. And when I asked her what the feeling in her chest was, she said she felt like she was being like squeezed, but she didn't know what it was. Now she struggles with this fear of being controlled, but she also wants intimacy. So she wants all this freedom, but in order to have intimacy, you do have to have some level of closeness. And so finding the balance for her between freedom and intimacy was what was happening for her, but really just scanning, tuning into where it is that fear is for you. I know for me it shows up often in my stomach and my solar plexus area as like a nervousness. Sometimes I get heartburn, or sometimes you just feel the butterflies in your stomach. And just learning to do the body scans and breathing into those parts of your body, and then just creating a sense of safety, because I think that's where it comes from oftentimes, is we just don't feel safe. So I know for me, and this is something we can get into later, but one of the ways I do it is I place my hand on my stomach and I just kind of rub it, almost like how you would rub the hand of your niece or nephew or a child that's really close to you, and you kind of just comfort them. And so I tend to do that, where I'm constantly talking to my inner me, to my inner child, and I'm making her feel safe. So it's always, it's okay, you've got lots to offer, you're safe, nothing's gonna happen, we're gonna try it, see if you don't like it, we'll do something else that feels more comfortable. So it's just being able to give yourself that self-talk.
Yeah, and it's like now we're the parents, or we're in charge now of our feelings, and now we have now the power to take care of ourselves, and then pamper ourselves, and what do you need? I started doing it a few years ago, so it was not something I thought that going on a vacation would be, I'm fine.
Yeah.
That'll release the stress or whatever. But it ended up being not true, and I would end up being more stressed with a vacation, because I never actually, tackled the issue internally, where I would be like, what's going on?
And maybe you didn't even release.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of times it gets stuck in your body.
For several years.
Yeah.
So, and it builds up. So it's interesting. Now, let's look into like some practical tools. Okay. So what is one or two simple, I know you mentioned one right now, or you showed us, like simple, powerful somatic exercises to signal safety, what you mentioned, to the nervous system, and stop that physical shrinking that we tend to do when we...
Yeah, there's so many that you can do. A really popular one is the Superman stance, where you're basically standing like Superman. And when you puff up your chest and you stand with your feet that are hip width apart, you put your chin up, you basically signal to your body, I'm empowered, I'm strong, and you do show up automatically better. It just signals to your nervous system that everything's all right and I'm in control. But there's so many different things you can do. Something that I learned in physical therapy a while back is you take your thumb, the flat part of your thumb, and you can put it right under your chin. There's kind of like a little dimple by your throat and chin, like right there. And you can put your tongue in between your teeth, like that. It's just very lightly. And what that does is that a lot of times when we're stressed, we tend to clench our teeth, and that signals to the body that something is the matter. So we need to protect, right? But when you do that, you're basically relaxing your jaw, and you're signaling to the body to turn on that parasympathetic nervous system, and it helps you calm down. Now for me, it helps sometimes as quickly as within 5 minutes.
Okay.
Like where it does kind of settle me a little bit. But there's so many things you can do. You can also do, I'm not sure what you call it, but it's where you're basically going from left to right, and it's signaling to the brain to kind of do this. It's like what binaural beats are, where you're going from left to right, and your brain is doing that switch back and forth. So when I'm nervous, something that I do is I'll just tap left, right, left, right, left, right, and then that way my brain can just do this. But there's so many different things that you can look up for how to calm the nervous system. Now, when it comes to visibility, it's going to be about strengthening the muscle of confidence. And the more you avoid something, the brain is going to want to keep avoiding it because you're reinforcing the belief that it's dangerous or that it's not safe. But whenever you put yourself in that situation and you say, nope, I did it last time, you see, I'm going to do it again, you start reinforcing the belief that it's normal, that it's nothing to be afraid of. But like I said, the more you avoid it, the more you'll continue to avoid it.
Yeah.
So it's just strengthening that muscle.
Yeah. And then you made me remember a friend, a very good friend of mine. He breathes. That's his number one thing.
Breath work.
Breathing. And I remember when I was less conscious, I would actually like bully him. You know, like, oh, you're breathing again. And but then when I started doing it myself, when I would get it, I was faced with situations that were very tough for me, right? And I said, okay, I'm just gonna start breathing. I don't know if it's gonna work or not. So I started breathing, and now I do it as part of like automatic, right? And like you mentioned, when you mentioned it within 5 minutes, like I would never think of me calming down in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It would be like, no, I need a half day or the whole day. Something fell and I'm mad for the rest of the week, right? And having those, practicing, like you mentioned, reinforcing, it changed my life. Because now I go like, and then I'm like, oh shoot, I'm doing what my friend did, like, in the same way that he would do it, because he would do it very intentionally. Like, it's not just breathing, but it's like
you have to be.
And I'm like, he was so right.
You have to be very intentional. One of the reasons why I don't bring up breath work, aside from the fact that it is kind of like the first one that most people go to, is because for me, breathing was not signaling safety, because a lot of times it would almost make me more anxious, and I know that happens to a lot of people. I had to learn how to breathe, because sometimes when you're already in a heightened state, you're like, okay, I'm gonna breathe, and now you're like, I'm not breathing correctly. Now I'm panicked that I'm not breathing correctly. Now I'm gonna die. So, but if you learn how to breathe, like you can do that box breathing where it's like 4, you inhale for 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 4, and then you hold it again. So you can do that, and that does help. But for me, breathing doesn't always, when I'm already at a very anxious state, it doesn't help. So I do have to figure out other ways.
And I'm happy that you mentioned, because you have options. Like, folks have options, right? So what might, for me, breathing works a lot. I've also done the stand once. Like, I was like, the Superman stand. I'm like, okay, I can do it. So, and again, going back to like the safety part, I feel safe. I feel okay to do it. I feel okay. So, but yeah, and like whatever works for you, but getting yourself committed. Like, I almost feel like getting committed to, to decide, I need to calm down, or I need to pamper myself, and or do whatever I need to do to feel safe.
I always look at, I have a beautiful niece that is so little right now. So for me, I always think of her, and I think, if she was here right now, what would I do to calm her down? Because a lot of times it's easier to comfort somebody else and to comfort ourselves. So to put yourself in the position of like an external self, and talk to you that way. Because I know that, if my niece was really nervous, I wouldn't be like, yeah, girl, be scared, and you should be more scared, and also people die when you do this, and I wouldn't throw more things at her to be afraid of. I would remind her of how safe she is. And so the more that I think about, okay, well, how would I comfort my niece, I talk to myself that way. you know, you use the gentle words, but not, I'm very careful to not, to be regulated myself,
Yeah.
right, when I'm talking to her. And so talking to myself in a way where I'm empowered, because the inner you, your inner child, the inner parts of you are always looking to yourself to be the leader. And when you don't show up as the leader for yourself, it's kind of like dogs. You know how, like, with dogs, they say the owner has to be very confident and has to project, you know, the sense of safety for the dog. And when they are not empowered, but rather they let the dog lead, the dog becomes a lot more anxious. And so it's kind of a strange analogy, but we need to be that leader for ourselves. And if we are not, then our body loses trust in ourselves, loses confidence in ourselves, and looks for other coping mechanisms, because the internal self learns, I can't trust myself.
Yeah.
Myself won't keep me safe.
That's interesting. It's like talking to your inner child, and that's true. I do talk spoiling it, or in a way, because it's true. I think that it's true. Like, it's almost like if I don't choose the right words that are, you know, that are gonna calm me or make me feel safe, then I start looking at, the brain is immense, right? The thought pattern can be so overwhelming, where you like thinking of instead of thinking of what keeps me safe, I start thinking about what other thing is gonna hurt me, or what other thing is gonna, just more anxiety. And it's just like,
well, the brain is meant to do that. That is the way that it keeps you safe, in a skewed way.
The dark side.
Yeah, because it wants to scan for all the possible threats so that you can minimize them. And so, of course, when you're already in a heightened state, your brain becomes a lot more sharp. So it's going to want to point at all the different things that will be a danger to you. So it's like, look, now there's so many people in the room. Now they're all going to judge. And now there's, you know, these other factors that I didn't like last time. Do you see? And so your brain is wanting to tell you, danger, danger, danger. Let me help you pick out all the danger spots. And what you want to teach your brain to do is to say, you know, thank you. I appreciate you for keeping me safe. I've got this.
Yeah.
I'm safe. I'm good. There's nothing. And then what you can do is, when you go through those moments where your brain is picking out all the different danger scenarios, what you can do is use that same technique, but to do it in the opposite way, where you're looking at, I think it's from the left to the right, at things that you know keep you safe. Like, you see that there's walls here, there's a ceiling, there's a floor. I'm very grounded, I'm protected. Oh, look, I have a friend that I know that keeps me feeling comforted because it's familiar, you know, I know that person. So you're now wanting to consciously, because your subconscious mind is going to want to show you all those dangers, but now you have to choose for your conscious mind to show you all the reasons why you're safe.
And you reminded me of the free will. Free will is like right there. It's like for you to practice it, right? And like you mentioned, that narrative, like I can choose the narrative of there's harm around me, versus choosing the narrative of, no, this is like, I'm actually safe, you know, everything's cool, you know, feel confident, and then the next move, let's move forward.
Yeah.
So now let's say, you know, now in practical terms, now we talked about, you know, some techniques, and then now that the body's calm, so what could be a technique for you to reframe it? Because I know I can choose, right? But it's sometimes for some folks it's really hard. Like, no, but I see that, you know, it's right there, and how can you help that person choose, you know, the right or something positive, you know?
You have to make the right connections, because you learned that narrative by forming a connection in your neural pathways, right? And so you've got to make new connections. And one of the ways that I teach people to do this is, for example, my cousin she had to enforce a boundary at work. And that was something that was very challenging for her to do to her superior, right? For example, I can't be available that day because I'll be out of town, so I won't be available for the calls. Or and it's really tough to establish boundaries when you've been taught that it's not safe. And so for her, when she did do it and she did enforce that boundary, I encouraged her to celebrate it and to give herself some kind of a reward, like a treat of some sort, because your brain needs to make the connection that you did something positive. And even though it feels uncomfortable, it needs to be tied to some sort of reward or happy memory. Because the more that you positively reinforce that behavior, the more you're going to want to do it.
Yeah.
And so celebrating your wins every time that you show up, every time that you do something scary that you normally wouldn't have done, celebrating it in some way, I think is really big.
That's good. And you made me think about, how we're so fragmented, like the mind, body, and soul. I mean, I used to be like, it's the same thing, come on, But it's like literally like your mind, you have to train your mind too, And then the spirit will tell you what your true self kind of thing. And then the mind's like the more, I guess, rational. You just rationalize it for better or for worse, right? So then you always have to be, I think, in constant balance,
Yeah, you would call that coherence. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot, where he talks about brain and heart coherence, because oftentimes our brain thinks one thing and our heart thinks another. So it's like, I want to feel safe in this, but then your brain might be like, oh, but you can't be safe. So it's bringing those two into alignment, and it's something that takes a lot of practice, because in many different ways we've been taught to trust the logical, the linear, over our emotions. And when you can bring the two together, finding different ways to do that, I think, is very helpful.
Yeah, it's like it aligns you, brings you to peace, right? It's not so much feeling ashamed per se for, I tend to get anxious, right? It's more like, oh, I see my body gets anxious, but I see the good part, and let me integrate that in. And then that's where you get to true, like, peace.
Yeah.
The peace and more confidence, and
instead of being, it takes a lot of practice.
Disaligned.
Yeah.
I bet. I've been practicing for years, so.
Trust me.
But it's good. It's very rewarding. It's very rewarding. It's very rewarding. So now, so let's talk about magnetic abundance.
Which is my favorite.
Exactly. So, for the skeptic out there, how is this about aligning your entire state of being with your goals rather than just wishing, right? What's the core feeling we need to cultivate with magnetic abundance?
Again, you're going to become magnetic when you show up as your authentic self. So the way you're going to, you have to think of yourself as a magnet. A magnet doesn't go seeking. It's just attracting the other one. You put this little microphone that's a magnet to me. Both were looking for each other. But it's not like the magnet doesn't go looking. It just attracts it. And they just are drawn. And so that's how it works. We don't have to toil. We don't have to spin. We don't have to be so nervous about trying to make certain things happen. The magnet just is. And so by you being in your true state, in your true vibration, which is the unfiltered, the unpolluted, not the, oh, I need to put this into my personality so that I'm more liked, or I need to do this more and pressure myself into doing more. But when you show up as your authentic self, you become more magnetic. Give me the question one more time, because I feel like there's something that I was going to say in that one.
So for the skeptic, how is this about aligning your entire state of being with your goals?
Yeah.
Rather than just wishing, oh, I just want more money, you know, kind of thing.
Because So the skeptic is always going to say, like I said, you need to do more. You need to put action. And I say, yes, true. But it's not just putting action. You have to take aligned action. Mm-hmm. So let's say for us, in the purpose of visibility, when I can show up to social media every single day and make a post because I'm supposed to, right? Mm-hmm. But it's very different when I show up from a state of being calm and neutral and being in a state where I already feel full in myself and enough, to where I'm not going out there to try to win you over. Mm-hmm. I'm here broadcasting my vibration and then being magnetic to those that are a match. Mm-hmm. And so when you're doing that and you become the vibration of that which is, I mean, you're always being magnetic to something that is the same vibration that you're at. But when you become the true vibration of yourself by being authentic, you become more magnetic, and you become more magnetic to things that are higher frequency that you want.
Yeah.
So, but you need to start with clearing out the debris and being your most authentic version of yourself. And that's how you're gonna notice you get downloads a lot quicker. You get ideas faster, where it's like, okay, well, how am I gonna get from point A to point B? And you just let that question go, but you just focus on you being you. It's interesting how things just come to you. It's like, oh, I need, a social media expert. Oh, then somebody comes along and they just happen to be that. Or, I need the answers to this question, and then you just happen to find it on the internet by chance. I mean, it's something that's interesting, because the skeptic is always going to want to lead with logic and action, but being magnetic comes from frequency mm-hmm. and vibration. And so it's always going to be show up as your most authentic self, and that's going to help you understand your self-worth. That's what's going to draw more things to you.
Yeah. And it's, recently I've been thinking more of the, being magnetic and being your true self. Mm-hmm. And literally when we talk about true self, is like your true self.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's, in the past I would be like, oh, I need to, like you mentioned, do specifically this or say these specific words mm-hmm. to be liked and therefore mm-hmm. to achieve my goal. Right? Mm-hmm. But then, that's not being authentic. You might reach that goal, but you're not actually authentic, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So then you're in a state where you always have to be thinking, and how can I perform in a way so that I could be liked, instead of being like, this is who I am, and like you said, whoever's in the same alignment mm-hmm. and that vibration, then they'll be attracted, mm-hmm. and then you feel at peace, because then you're not fragmented or mm-hmm. Rejecting parts of yourself, which is, if we go deeper into it, it's like, okay, I accept this, I am this person, and I practice it, and I practice it with consciousness. It's like, wow. And then you get this peace, and things flow. This it's less stressful, less energy that you have to put into. So.
And think about it, because that was one of the questions I asked myself in the prompts, which I will share with you guys. But one of the questions was, if I felt true safety within myself, how would I show up differently? Mm-hmm. And that was the answer to my question, is I wouldn't feel the need to perform. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be like, because I know for me, as a woman, the need to show up, and look nice, mm-hmm. But for me, on a personal level, it's always been, everything has to be curated. It has to look like a magazine, and I've got this perfectionistic streak. Mm-hmm. But if I didn't have to show up so perfect and I could just be raw in myself, how would that feel? And it just felt so empowering that, like, that's enough. Mm-hmm. Not all the lights, not all of the nice outfits and the hair and makeup, and that's always fun, but showing up and just emitting your own frequency and knowing that that's all you need to do today, It really does take out the weight from everything.
Yeah. And then I thought about, because I would be like, but if you're not perfect, then you go your fears, right?
Yeah.
But then, now that I've lived through, enough years, I've seen people that are they're very true. They're very authentic. I mean, like they speak loudly, or they show up however they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that they're the most followed.
Mm-hmm.
Almost, it's like people are attracted to those folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't need to be, filtering or performing differently for the other person. And on the contrary, they say, if you don't like this, then
bye.
Bye. And then not necessarily in an arrogant way, but it's like, if this is something that you don't resonate with, then you can, your free will, you can choose something else, right?
And I recently heard an energy worker, Jeffrey Allen, say that he prefers his marketing in a way that most people wouldn't, where, a lot of marketing experts will say, you need to put yourself out there more so that you bring in more clients. And he says, no, I kind of like the fact that I have things the way that they are, because for me, I don't want to attract everybody. For me, I want to be so myself, so completely authentic, that I repel those who wouldn't really want who I am and what I bring anyways.
Yeah.
Because I know that it'll repel them, and they will then find the person to whom they are a better match to. And there's plenty to go around, so they will find the right match for them. And so I think that for you, when you notice that with other social media influencers or content creators that show up as their authentic self, that's what makes them so magnetic. And I think that the mind nowadays is becoming more and more keen to what is a performance and what is curated and what is not.
Yeah, I think so too. You can feel it, or you can observe it. It's like, no, that's not real. But that's true. So let's talk. Explore some insights into this. And what does a practical first step look like, right? In visibility, in terms of visibility, and you can pitch in any other aspects that you want to discuss. Can you give us a simple visibility ladder, per se? One tiny low-risk action someone can take, let's say this week, to practice being seen.
This was actually one of the questions in the journal prompts that I had. And because the question was something like, what's something that you can do that won't feel like pressure? And I thought about it, and what I came up with was, well, this feels good, what I'm doing right now, doing my little ritual for, the full moon, and asking myself these questions and going deep, because it puts me in a state of calmness, but it also, I'm talking to myself and going within, and that's something that's very fulfilling. And I thought to myself, okay, well, if I can go into a moment when I'm doing my journal prompts or my gratitude or my manifestations or my meditations in the morning, then now I'm showing up from the overflow the minute I turn that camera on. I'm not performing, I'm just saying, oh my God, I'm so filled, I poured into myself, and now I'm pouring out all the overflow, so I'm gonna share that with you guys. And so what I came up with was, okay, my first step that I'm gonna take is I'm gonna do the work of just creating safety within myself. And if I don't show up and I don't turn on the camera, so be it, but at least I did that. At least I showed up just trying to explore what safety feels like within my nervous system, or asking myself questions about where that comes from. So just doing the internal work. So if maybe your first step can't be something as wild as putting yourself out there, then just go within and let that first step be, let me clear out the debris. Where does all of this negative self-talk come from? What were the words, like asking yourself those questions. And like I said, I have some of those journal prompts that I did this weekend that I'm willing to share with you guys, and you guys can just find that on my website. But you can ask yourself those questions to find out where those labels come from too.
And I love that, journal prompts, because it kind of forces you to actually look into yourself. Because we're just like on an automatic doing things, but then when you're like, okay, be honest with yourself and then ask the question, that becomes like, oh shoot, you get to explore and see things or discover things that you would never think you would. Like it's and not, I mean, you can write it down, and that's even better to write it down, because then it gives you more, it just works better. But even just asking yourself, like, honestly, the question, then the answers are within you.
Yeah,
you know how they say, right? So
they really are. And the brain is it functions that way. It functions on a question basis. So if you ask the brain questions, the brain will give you answers, and really your body will too.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. But yeah, the journal prompts, and you hit it right on the you hit the nail right on the head, that it is important to write it down, because studies have shown that when you write things down, you'll give a different answer than if you were to just type it or speak it. And you do find more information when you're writing.
And then
it down.
you're slowed down. You're like,
yeah.
I think too, and then you realize that you think too fast. And then you just like scribble, and then like, oh shoot, like, but and then I think, oh, like I'm thinking too fast, or I'm like, I need to calm down. So that also, I've noticed that about myself too. So, but it's good. I like the prompt thing. Now, you mentioned a little bit. We spoke a little bit about this, but again, the fear of judgment. I think that's the core of visibility. Like, I'm judged. I'm being judged.
Yeah.
What is the best piece of advice for when that voice of criticism comes in? Either internally or externally. I think that sometimes externally is like even worse.
It's worse, yeah.
After they take that step, what would you recommend?
I once heard somebody say to themselves, I think it was a pastor that was speaking, and he said, my wife tells me, stop creating thought bubbles, stop putting thought bubbles over people's heads. And I thought that was so interesting, because we often will put the dialogue, right, of what somebody else is thinking, those little thought bubbles, and they might not even be true. So first, understanding that we don't know what everybody else is thinking, and what we think about ourselves is really the most important, right? But it goes back to self-worth, and you're not gonna be able to do all the work when you're like in a pinch and you really need to get out there. So what you can do in that moment is remind yourself, and this is going to take practice, but remind yourself, like we did today before we started filming today, I have value. I have value. I have something worth sharing, even if it's just me, even if it's just my light. Even if nothing magnificent comes out of my voice today. Even if I don't have words that are so like, wow, I just showed up today, and I have value just because I exist. So if you can just remind yourself of that, it might help a little.
Yeah, and I think it's because, and I think that's one of the hardest tasks to do, to learn how to love yourself, but it takes a lot of work. But I love you from here, and I truly believe that we all are valuable at any capacity. And it's just like to me personally, it's like a human core value. Like, you exist, you're worth it. So but so we self-impose all these limitations of what this is not, and it's all in the mind. So the mind is super powerful, for good or for worse.
It is. In the Bible, there's a scripture about when the Israelites were going into the promised land, and it says something about they saw themselves as grasshoppers in their own sight, and those were the people that did not enter the promised land. But the ones that did were the ones that said, we are well able to. And that illustration for me, when I read that one time, I remember thinking, it's not true that, well, if you see yourself as a grasshopper, you're always going to be afraid. You're going to be like, oh, they're going to stomp all over me. They're going to take over. When you're showing up online as a content creator, when you're showing up to a date or a job interview, whatever it is that you're wanting to be visible for, you need to start with anchoring your identity as a champion, as somebody, even if you don't want to go as big as a champion, I am valuable. I have light in me that is not the same facet as others' lights, and it's unique. It's not for everybody, but it's unique.
Yeah, it's, just start little by little, little by little by little, and then when I've been in depression states, I think you end up thinking about yourself obviously about the worst, right? But then if you ask yourself, why am I'm valuable, and even like who shows up, even if it's a mailman, it's so interesting. I've had conversations with folks that are just like, even the store, at the store, they appreciate, like, when they express that appreciation, that means that you're doing something good.
Yeah.
That you're valuable, to that person, right? Even though they don't, express it.
You wouldn't even think it.
Yeah. So you just think about, what people are around me. Like, I do have friends that appreciate me. That means that I'm valuable.
You belong.
Exactly, that you belong. So I think that's very powerful. Now, so we have the mind, the body, energy. So what is one key takeaway you want people to hold on to? What would be that?
I like how we just said you belong. You belong on this earth, and you have the right to take up space. You were created, and you exist for a purpose. There's no other human being like you on this earth. What you can give and what you can offer to this world simply by being yourself is not the same as what I give. So it's kind of like when a father has different children, and the father says, oh, I don't have a favorite. But each one of their children is very important to him, because the way that one child loves him is not the same as the way another child loves him. And so we have different ways of loving, different ways of being, different ways of communicating. I have two beautiful cousins that their mom passed away. And I always say she left behind the best part of her in them. My cousin Desiree has certain aspects of my aunt that are not like my cousin Cassidy. My cousin Cassidy has certain aspects of her that are not like Desiree. They're both equally beautiful, but they have different ways of expressing that I can't have one without the other.
Yeah, I love that. I love that observation, because that's, I used to hate my brothers, always fighting, But then I realized how that is so true. Like each and one of us got a little bit of our parents, And I realized it in myself. Like, oh, I see how I'm with, like my mom in these aspects. Not with, the the yelling or whatever. I can choose, right? But I got the good parts, and I love it, and then my sister got some other good parts, and my brother got some parts from my dad, and I also got some parts from my dad that I love, and I, embody, and now, I put out there in the universe or the world,
and for each your own purpose, right? Like I have a sister she has no problem telling you how she feels, and I'm more reserved when it comes to expressing my emotions. So if I'm upset, I'm not going to yell at you and cuss you out right away.
Right away.
Maybe after a few more tries. But she's really quick. Like if she's sad, she cries, and if she's angry, she doesn't mind yelling. And I always admire that. We're so different. We all have different gifts and different abilities. Even our faults sometimes are just gifts that are misused. So we all have value. And if you remember that you, just for being yourself, you bring something that no other people do to this collective, and we need you.
Yeah.
So you need to show up.
Definitely, we need to show up. Okay.
We need you.
Yeah. Anything else that you'd like to add, Nia?
Just keep doing the internal work, because that's what it's all about.
Yes, please. This is all about consciousness expansion.
You can show up all you want, but if you're showing up like a big hot mess, you know, you're going to get something. It just might not be what you're looking for.
So it's just a learning.
Yeah.
You come into this world to just learn and experience, and you choose with consciousness how to move forward.
Yeah.
So I think.
And you're valuable. You're here to bless the collective. So show up.
Yes. So Nia, so to those folks who are interested, how can they dive into deeper into these topics? And do you have any social media?
There's so many different resources. There's so many great books out there. But as far as my social media, I have recently changed my handle, and it is Nia is Vibes. On Instagram, TikTok, it's Nia Such a Vibe. I will be working on getting those together so that they're a little bit more aligned with the names, but that's where you can find me right now. And my website, which is, I have the link in my bio on my Instagram. I have placed the journal prompts for free. So, and it's right up at the top. So you guys can just go into the link in my bio, and you can try those journal prompts for yourself and see how they work out for you.
Yeah, and I think even just starting with that, and we'll put in the links in the description, Nia's handles and social media accounts. But even if you give yourself an opportunity to look into those prompts, and you don't have to write it, but just answer them to yourself. Take some time. You're gonna find a lot. You're gonna find a lot about yourself, and that will hopefully, help you in healing and furthering yourself and to become more visible and take space. Take space in this world, because, I know there's different beliefs in reincarnation and not, but at least in this incarnation, give yourself that gift to be seen and. To be out there and for you to be happy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, cool. Thank you so much, Nia, for coming.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and then, definitely, we can hopefully see you back. And
I would love to come back. We have so much to talk about.
I know. It's a lot. Let's expand our consciousness. I love you guys. Bye-bye.